What is up? This is Alex from Double Move Sports back with part 2 of this first round mock draft as promised. Check on the channel if you haven't already. Part 1 that breaks down picks 1 through 16. We get into a lot of the fallout of the 49ers move up to number 3. We have some answers for the Dolphins and the Philadelphia Eagles in their first round moves as well. As always, hit that like and subscribe button if you're liking this mock draft content. But today we are getting into picks 17 through 32 of the first round. I will go ahead and throw up the first half of this first round on the screen here just so we can kind of get caught up on some of these picks. Trevor Lawrence went at 1 overall, followed by Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, and Justin Fields. So quarterbacks with the first 4 picks. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this part 2. So at 17, we have the Vegas Raiders on the board. Their biggest needs, in my opinion, are the offensive line. And in the secondary, they did trade away several other offensive linemen during that free agency period. But they also could use some stud DBs as well. I see a couple options on the board here. If they wanted to go with that offensive line, they could pick up Walker Little out of Stanford, Tevin Jenkins out of Oklahoma State, even Elijah Vera Tucker out of USC. If they wanted to go corner, they could go J.C. Horn, Greg Newsome, maybe even Asante Samuel Jr., but I'm going to lock in a cornerback for the Vegas Raiders. It's going to be J.C. Horn, cornerback out of South Carolina to give that defense a lift. They picked up Yannick Ngakoue in free agency to really elevate their ability to get after the passer. So this would help start to make this defense whole, getting after the passer in the secondary, stopping the run. So J.C. Horn is the pick here to give Vegas some talent there. And now we're back to the Miami Dolphins at the 18th overall pick. They picked Jamar Chase in this mock draft at number 6. And with this pick, I want to help protect Tua Tagovailoa in this offense. They brought in Will Fuller in free agency. As I said, at pick 6, they brought in Jamar Chase. So let's get an offensive lineman here to help elevate this unit of all of these weapons. So the options here, I just mentioned a couple of them for the Raiders, but the guy I actually want to go with here is going to be Elijah Vera Tucker, tackle out of USC. He has some versatility and can shift into guard as well if needed, but he can play that tackle spot because that is how he is listed. So Elijah Vera Tucker gives them a supreme young talent on the offensive line and some versatility. I think that would be a home run pick for Miami at 18. Now we have the Washington football team at 19. I wish they could go ahead and draft, a mascot here with this pick, but we're going to have to continue to be on hold for that. And with Washington, after bringing in Curtis Samuel, I don't think wide receiver is quite as big of a need for them here in the first round as it was previously. I do think they might draft another wide receiver on day 2, maybe even day 3. Before Washington, man, they have a dominant defense. Why don't we continue to build out that defense? They have a great front 4 led by Chase Young, who they picked 2nd overall last year. Let's bring in a linebacker here to really help this front 7 unit as a whole. A guy that I really like is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I say that 5 times fast, out of Notre Dame. I really like Xavin Collins out of Tulsa as well. But I'm going to go ahead and go with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah here out of Notre Dame. For this pick for Washington, continue to build this team on defense. You got Fitzmagic there at quarterback. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch this football team this year, and I think they're probably the favorite right now in the NFC East. So we're going to go ahead and lock in that pick. Now we're on to the Chicago Bears at pick 20. Andy Dalton in there in Chicago, throwing the rock. Allen Robinson, who knows if this is the best quarterback he's ever played with. We got Dalton, Trubisky, Nick Foles, Blake Bortles. But for Chicago, there's a couple different directions I'd like to see them go. They have a hole at cornerback now that they cut Kyle Fuller. They also could use help on the offensive line. A good but not great unit, have some veterans there as well on some big contracts. But I actually would love to see them go cornerback here. I think some of the motive behind cutting Kyle Fuller was knowing that at this pick 20 overall, they were going to have some really good options at the cornerback spot. The guys at the top of the board here are Greg Newsome out of Northwestern. You have Asante Samuel Jr. as well, cornerback out of Florida State. A little bit undersized, but he plays a lot bigger than he is. So we're going to go ahead and lock in Asante Samuel Jr., cornerback out of Florida State for the Chicago Bears at 20 overall. Next, we're going to my Indianapolis Colts, big Colts fan here. There's 2 things that really stick out to me for Indy. 1, it's a wide receiver, and 2 would be a tackle to replace Anthony Costanzo, who just retired this past offseason. So at wide receiver, you got T.Y. Hilton coming back. You got Paris Campbell coming back from injury. Michael Pittman, rookie last season. Hopefully we see him emerge as well. Zach Pascal is there. So you have some good but not necessarily great wide receivers. Jaylen Waddle is sitting here still on the board. Very, very tempting. Then you also could use a tackle. I think there's a lot of deep talent at the tackle spot in this draft. You still have Walker Little there. Tevin Jenkins. I don't want to butcher this name, but Dylan Radune's not as familiar with his play, but from North Dakota State as well. So Sam Cosby from Texas. So there are some tackles in this draft, and maybe if the Colts get into round 2, they can move up and get one of those guys. But I don't think they can pass on Jaylen Waddle, still sitting on the board here at 21 overall. We're going to lock in this pick, Jaylen Waddle, for the Indianapolis Colts. He is built on speed, but I think he is a lot closer to a Tyreek Hill than he is to like a John Ross. Fantastic career at Alabama, really driven by efficiency. He played there with, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs. So he wasn't putting up these eye-popping numbers, but always was very, very efficient with his opportunities. Over 20 yards per catch in his last season there, a special teams player as well. So Jaylen Waddle is the pick for the Colts. Now we have the Tennessee Titans, and I think we're going to go back-to-back receiver here in the AFC South. The Titans let Jonnu Smith go in free agency. He ended up in New England. They let Corey Davis go. He ended up with the New York Jets. So I think receiver is definitely a position of need for Tennessee. I like Rashod Bateman with this pick. A.J. Brown is going to be the uncontested one there in Tennessee, but they need a solid number 2 to take that Corey Davis role, not someone who is going to absolutely give the defense nightmares, but someone who is a very solid receiver, can kind of do it all and play, the 1B or the 2 to A.J. Brown in Tennessee on a run-first team. So Rashod Bateman is the pick here. Very talented guy for the Tennessee Titans. I love Elijah Moore, really good slot guy, but I think they need a solid number 2 on the outside. And then you got Rondale Moore on the board as well, who's kind of this Swiss Army knife type of player. I could see him going to Tennessee and them utilizing him in interesting ways, but I think Rashod Bateman's just a better fit for what that offense does. But now we're back on the clock with the Jets at 23. We took Zach Wilson at number 2 for the New York Jets. So now you think, okay, do you want to go defense with this pick? They have plenty of needs on defense. They could still use help on the offensive line. They could use a running back as well. So I think all of those are in play. So at this point, I'm just going to kind of look and see who's on the board here. I do think edge rusher is probably the biggest need for this team at the 23rd overall pick. I think they can wait and still get some running back help later on. They did bring in Tevin Coleman to this team. I don't think he's the end-all, be-all answer, but they have some depth there. So let's see which edge rushers are on the board here for the New York Jets. You got Jason Owe from Penn State, Azeez Ojulari from Georgia, and then you have the pair of Miami guys, Jalen Phillips and Gregory Rousseau. I like Jalen Phillips from Miami this year. Interestingly enough, we could see 2 Miami edge rushers go in the first round. We're going to go ahead and take the first one here. Jalen Phillips out of Miami to the New York Jets at 24. Bringing us to to the Jets at pick 23, bringing us to Pittsburgh at pick 24. And man, they do need a quarterback, but with those top 5 guys gone, I don't think they're going to be able to get one here. Obviously, I don't think they should reach on a guy like Kellen Mond or Kyle Trask. So unless Pittsburgh moves up in this draft, I don't think they're going to end up with a quarterback here in the first round. They did lose Matt Filer off their offensive line in free agency, so they could try to address that position. They also need a running back, and I think we're going to go with the fun pick here, and we are going to take the stud running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know a lot of people in the fantasy football community, the dynasty fantasy football community would love to see this as well. We're going to lock in Najee Harris to the Pittsburgh Steelers here if I can find him in this Pro Football Focus mock draft simulator. Najee Harris, to me, I don't know why he's so far down on this list, because he's my favorite running back in this draft. He's an absolute tank. He can get it done in the receiving game as well, and he has what it takes to be a workhorse. He's got the size, he's got the speed. To really be a workhorse in the NFL. We know the Pittsburgh Steelers typically love to use a workhorse running back. So bring in a guy with some juice for Big Ben Roethlisberger's last Super Bowl run. Najee Harris is the pick at 24. Back to the Jacksonville Jaguars with their second pick in this first round at 25 overall. Blessed with Trevor Lawrence at 1. I think with this pick, it makes sense to get an offensive tackle and go ahead and get that cornerstone piece that's going to be protecting Trevor Lawrence in this offense. Yes, they have needs on the defensive side of the ball. They honestly could go any which direction on defense, but nothing sticks out to me here as like an extreme value. I think there are going to be good edge rushers for them in round 2, secondary players as well at cornerback and safety. So I want to protect Trevor Lawrence. I don't want to mess around with my quarterback getting sacked, getting hit, getting hurt. So if I'm Jacksonville, I am locking in a tackle. I know we got Walker Little here as the top one on the Pro Football Focus board, but I like Tevin Jenkins from Oklahoma State. So that is going to be the pick for Jacksonville at 25. Bringing us to the Cleveland Browns, a team that's got a good offensive line, got good running backs. They've got Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry at wide receiver, brought back Rashard Higgins as well, Baker Mayfield at quarterback. So their needs are all on the defensive side of the ball. There's been some rumors with some of the big name pass rushers going to Cleveland, pairing them up with Myles Garrett. We're going to go ahead and make that happen in the draft. I think Jason Away from Penn State is a fantastic edge rusher. Azeez Ojulari from Georgia on the board here as well, along with Gregory Rousseau, who we mentioned from Miami. But for Cleveland, we are going to go ahead and go with Jason Away from Penn State, get them another young edge rusher to help bolster this defense. Bringing us to the Baltimore Ravens, another team that I really think needs an edge rusher and is going to take an edge rusher in this draft. They just brought in Sammy Watkins on a 1-year deal. So I think maybe that takes receiver down their priority list for a run-first offense. They could use help on the offensive line as well. They did bring in some help in free agency there at the guard spot. So I don't think that's going to be their pick in the first round. Wouldn't surprise me if they went tackle, given all the Orlando Brown Jr. drama we're seeing there in Baltimore, if they have to move on from him. But assuming that they can retain that O-line that they have, I would like to see them go ahead and replace Matt Judon and Yannick Ngakoue, who they lost in free agency. So that is going to be another edge rusher. We alluded to it earlier. We are going to go ahead and lock in the other Miami guy, Gregory Rousseau, for the Baltimore Ravens. And now we're on the clock with the New Orleans Saints at 28 overall, coming down the stretch here in this first round. And for the Saints, if a quarterback fell here, if Mac Jones for some reason fell to 28, or if Sean Payton loves one of those QBs more than we know, I wouldn't be surprised to see him try to move up and get one. Obviously, with how high they went in this mock draft, I don't think they'd be willing to give up the draft capital to make that happen. But the Saints do need wide receiver. Emmanuel Sanders is gone. All they really have is Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara in that offense to catch passes from either Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston. So I think receiver is a position of need. Also, several pieces on defense are positions of need. But for the New Orleans Saints, we are going to lock in a wide receiver. Sean Payton is an offensive-minded guy. They're going to find some depth on defense on day 2, on day 3. So we're going to lock in Terrace Marshall Jr. From LSU. This guy could be the second coming of Justin Jefferson. Stef, on our most recent mock draft pod, talked all about Terrace Marshall Jr. That was a dynasty rookie mock draft. And he played with some of the best at LSU. Played with Joe Burrow, played with Jamar Chase a couple seasons ago, and Justin Jefferson himself. No, we're not projecting him to come out for 1,400 yards, a record-breaking rookie season, but a very, very good player in his own right. So Terrace Marshall Jr. from LSU is the pick for the New Orleans Saints. They go with more. They do need a receiver, but more of a want than a need. I think defense could make a lot of sense for New Orleans there at 28, but I really think Sean Payton is going to go offense. Bringing us to the Packers, and come on, it's got to be a wide receiver, right? Aaron Rodgers has been begging for one. Instead of taking one last year, they took his future replacement. They took a running back in the second round in A.J. Dillon. They didn't really bring in any big names in free agency, so Green Bay has got to go receiver with this pick. Elijah Moore and Rondale Moore are the two names that obviously stick out to me. I like Elijah Moore a ton, but I think Rondale Moore would be a fantastic pick for Green Bay. 5'7", so a little bit undersized, but this dude has got absolute burner speed, and he is just like a human muscle. He is an absolute beast. He like I said earlier, he's like that Curtis Samuel type of player. He can get it done deep down the field. He can get it done on gadget plays, on screens, on end arounds. Very, very versatile. Dominated in his freshman season at Purdue. Had some injuries and things derail the rest of his career there, but when he was on the field, he was still electric. He's got speed in the 4.3s. We saw him run in the 4.3s at his pro day. We can't really take that as an official time, not as an official combine time, just because the pro days tend to run a little bit quicker, just because they're not electric and most of them are hand timed and things like that. But Rondale Moore to the Green Bay Packers would be a lot of fun. Be that number 2 behind Davante Adams. So that is the pick here. And now we have these last 3 teams here, the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Bucs. First up on this list is the Buffalo Bills. Their offense is looking solid. Josh Allen at QB, a good offensive line. I would say running back, but they brought in Matt Breida. They still have Zach Moss and Devin Singletary. A lot of good, not great options. They're set at wide receiver. At tight end, they brought in Jacob Hollister from the Seattle Seahawks. So this is going to be a defensive pick. Now it's just a question of really who's the best available. They need interior D-line, they need edge rusher, they need cornerback, as you can even see here on the PFF mock draft simulator. So to me, a guy I really, really like at linebacker is Xavin Collins. I would love to squeeze him into this first round, but he's more of a versatile do-it-all linebacker, not a true edge rusher. But what we are going to do is lock in Azeez Ojulari from Georgia to bring a promising young talent rushing off the edge to get after the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. So that is the pick here, bringing us to the Kansas City Chiefs at 31. They did bring in Joe Thuney in free agency. Kyle Long came out of retirement to play offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs, but I still think they're going to overcompensate and kind of overdo it on the offensive line to protect Patrick Mahomes after we saw him running away from those Tampa Bay Buccaneers defenders in the Super Bowl. So I think they're going to go ahead and bring in more offensive line help. We still have a lot of talent on the board here. And a guy I really like is Sam Cosby out of Texas. No, we haven't really talked about him yet. He's a little further down on the board here. But I think they're going to go ahead and pick Cosby from Texas, offensive tackle at 31 overall. And last but not least, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team bringing back every starter from their Super Bowl team. So they really don't have any glaring needs. Antonio Brown, still a free agent at the time of this recording, but they have guys in Scotty Miller that they really like there. Tyler Johnson, another guy they really like there. So they really don't have any big needs. Brought back Levante David on the defensive side of the ball. So this is a tough one because they're so solid. But I think they're just going to go ahead and go value with this pick. I would love to see him take a guy like Elijah Moore, but I don't think it's going to happen because of how much they like Tyler Johnson, because of how much they like Scotty Miller, and because AB could still be back in Tampa next season, at least at the time of this recording. So we're just going to go ahead. I'm going to butcher this name. I already know it. But take Trevon Moehrig from TCU as a safety. That secondary is very nice. Antoine Winfield, great pick for Tampa last season. But we're going to go ahead and pair Trevon Moehrig with Antoine Winfield Jr., and give them one of the most promising young safety duos in the NFL. So that is going to be the pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That brings the end of this first round to a close. And we will recap these second half picks really quick. I'll also throw them up on the screen here. At 17, we have J.C. Horn to the Vegas Raiders. At 18, Elijah Vera Tucker to the Dolphins. At 19, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah to the Washington Football Team. At 20, Asante Samuel Jr. to the Bears. At 21, Jaylen Waddle to the Colts, followed by Rashod Bateman to the Titans. Jalen Phillips to the Jets. Najee Harris to the Steelers. Tevin Jenkins to Jacksonville. Jason Away to the Browns. Gregory Rousseau to the Baltimore Ravens. Terrace Marshall Jr. to the Saints. Rondale Moore to the Packers. Azeez Ojulari to the Bills. Sam Cosby to the Chiefs. And Trevon Moehrig to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So this brings part 2 to a close. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this draft. Also, let me know if you'd like to see me start going into round 2. I would love to break down the first half of round 2 or even the second half, just because it's such a deep draft this year. There are still so many big names on the board and available for some of these NFL teams. But that is going to do it for today. Again, like and subscribe if you haven't already. This is Alex from Double Move Sports, and we'll see you next time.